So many times we make decisions and we think that we're being logical, but many times what we're actually doing is rationalizing an emotional decision. A couple of days ago I did a live stream, a webinar, where I talked about my decision not to skydive anymore because it just wouldn't be the smart move, because I have a problem with my eyes, I don't have much depth perception, I don't have any depth perception as a matter of fact. And so because of it, the risk of me crash landing again and breaking my leg again or worse is incredibly high. And so because of that, I made the conscious decision not to skydive anymore. And it was an incredibly difficult decision for me because emotionally I wanted to continue to skydive. It's something that I really, really wanted because I enjoyed it so much. I had such a good time doing it. I was afraid, sure, but it was afraid excited. And the two times that I jumped out of an airplane, well, I improved. Yeah, the first time I did it pretty decently for a first timer, and the second time I noticeably improved my performance, except for the landing, of course, where I shattered my ankle. But be that as it may, as much as I enjoyed skydiving, I made the conscious, rational decision not to skydive anymore. Now, that is an example of a decision that was rationally arrived at. But many times people decide on something out of emotion and then later rationalize it. Let me give an example. Suppose in my same case, insofar as skydiving is concerned, suppose that what had really happened was that the first time I'd been absolutely terrified of jumping out of an airplane, and the second time it had been even worse. Suppose for the sake of argument. Now, in that case, my fear would have been so overwhelming that I would have been looking for any excuse not to skydive again. As I said in the webinar, if you're a webinar member, the recording is there, and if you're not, please join. In that recording, in that webinar conversation, I discussed the fact that, you see, I really enjoyed it. There was a lot of pleasure. But suppose it had been the reverse, that it had been full of fear. And the program that I purchased was a 7-jump program over 2-3 days. And I'd only done 2. Suppose, for the sake of argument again, that what had really happened was that I was so terrified of skydiving that I was looking for any excuse. Then I would have rationalized my decision to not skydive anymore. You see the difference? My decision not to skydive is because I love it. I want to do it, but I have this problem with my eyes that make it such that if I were to skydive again, the odds are very high that I would crash land again and potentially break another ankle, or perhaps much worse. It was a rational decision. But suppose, like I say, hypothetically, that fear had been driving me. Fear had been driving me and preventing me from doing something. In this case, skydiving, but it can be whatever. You'll notice that people tend to rationalize their emotional decisions. And what's more, they tend to create an incredible intellectual superstructure to explain their decision. Let me go at it another way. In the United States, it's increasingly clear that we are headed to a civil war. There are 2 bands, politically speaking, and they hate each other. I mean, they hate each other with a passion. And the hatred is so profound and so immutable that in the short term, I'm talking, perhaps this election, perhaps the 2024 election, but at some point, there is going to be a break. There's going to be a break, and the military somehow or other will get involved, because that's how civil war starts. The civil wars always start with one faction of the military fighting another faction of the military. And we are already seeing in the US military, the officer corps are, for all intents and purposes, woke Democrats, and the non-commissioned officers and enlisted men are Trumpists. This is a recipe for disaster, and we can see it, okay? But what's interesting is that, see, these 2 sides hate each other for a whole host of reasons that are completely irrational, but once the Civil War starts, they will likely rationalize the reason they are going to civil war. They will come up with an intellectual reason as to why they are doing something that is really emotion-based and not rational. My guess is that, see, the right, the Trumpists, whatever you want to call them, they're going to rationalize their decision as fighting against abortion. You know, fighting to save the little babies. Yeah, that's a great excuse, a great rationale to go to war over or with somebody, right? Whereas the other side, the woke leftists, they're going to pick up the banner of fighting racism. That's what's going to be their rationalization. But notice, both the pro-Trump people who are going to be anti-abortion, save the babies, right, pro-life, that's going to be their rationale, and the woke leftists who are going to say, you know, fight the racists, fight the Nazis, fight the whatever, right? These are going to be rationalizations. It's a fundamentally emotional decision to go to war. I'm bringing all of this up so that you can pay attention to your decisions. The big decisions, the important decisions in your life. Many times they come out of a source of emotion, but don't let your emotion dictate your actions. I always tell you this. Your decisions, the important decisions, should always be dictated by reason, by logic, by empirical knowledge and acquired information. Never decide on something big, based on an emotion. I mean, you can decide whether you're going to have a chocolate ice cream or a vanilla ice cream based on emotion, based on which one you like the most, yeah? That's a trivial decision. Yeah, the trivial decision's fine. Run with your emotions. But the important ones, insofar as your life is concerned, never fall for the trap of rationalizing a decision, especially a major decision. My decision not to skydive anymore? Well, that decision, you know, it's been twirling around in my head for so long. Because as I explained in the webinar, I had so much fun skydiving. And not only that, I liked the whole environment, the people, the sorts of people that they were, the whole environment. It was so pleasant and cheerful and yet soothing and calm. The people there, they were all delightful. And the fact that they were all involved in skydiving, it gave us all like a point of unity. And it was just terrific. I felt so welcomed there. And I had such a good time. I mean, I really did. I mean, not just the skydiving, I mean the people. They were lovely. They were lovely people. And there was something there about all of us really enjoying skydiving that just brought us together. And it was wonderful. And I wanted to be a part of that milieu, that environment, that social group. I very, very badly wanted to be a part of it because it was just a cool environment with cool people. Not to mention skydiving, which I have to tell you, you know, the more I think about it, the more I just like, I enjoyed it so much. And to tell you the truth, if my foot were like magically presto changeo fixed and I could go out of an airplane now, I might well do it. Even with my problems with my vision, that, you know, my lack of depth perception makes it a hazard for me to jump, yeah? But you see the point. I made a rational decision, and the sacrifice is great. I feel it. I feel that I'm leaving behind something that I would have enjoyed the rest of my life, but that is simply too dangerous for me. And it's not out of, you know, fear, because I've been thinking about it a lot. My decision not to skydive anymore is not based at all in fear. Not at all. I mean, I posted those videos of me skydiving, right? And you can see there in those videos, I don't hesitate. I'm just thrilled to do it. I'm excited. Of course, I'm scared, but I'm not terrified. But had it been in the opposite case, had I really been terrified, this would have been a great rationale. And nobody would have noticed. And everybody would have been like, oh, fine, you know. But that's why I'm telling you this, so that you think about your own decisions. And here's another thing. There's nothing wrong with feeling afraid, really afraid to do something. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? And there's nothing wrong sometimes with feeling that fear is so overwhelming that you can't really pursue a goal. It's disappointing. It's disappointing if you give in to fear. Because the difference between giving in to fear and giving in to reasonable objections sometimes is pretty vague. I mean, it would be wonderful if it was a bright dividing line. The danger is such that when you're on this side, oh, it's rational to not do something, but when you're on this side, oh, you're a chicken shit. It would be lovely if that were the case. That's not the case, not in real life. The borderline between the two is vague. But I think the point of this video, and I hope I've conveyed it, is that, see, whatsoever your decision, make sure that that decision is based on reason, on logic. You set aside your emotion, no matter how powerful that emotion. Let me phrase that. Especially when the emotion is powerful. That's precisely when you most have to set aside your emotions and use your reason, your logic, your acquired knowledge, and your experience. I mean, if you don't, like I said so many times before, and I'll say it again, this is the difference between a man and every other creature on this earth, including most women and most other men, as a matter of fact. Our ability to set aside our emotions, no matter how powerful, and make a decision for our best interests in the long term based on reason, logic, acquired knowledge, and experience.